So in the previous class, we have seen some basics like how to work with the data types and variables, Java variables and data types. And then we have seen how to use conditional statements and control statements, looping statements, right? So today we'll see one more topic, arrays. So most important topic, please listen this very carefully. So what is an array? In the last class, we have seen like there are two kinds of data types. One is primitive and derived, right? So what is primitive data type? Primitive means we can store only one value at a time in one variable. So one variable allows us to store only one single value at a time. Whereas derived data types, we can store multiple values into one single variable. So arrays is also one of the example of derived data type. So if I create any variable with array type, we can store multiple values. Okay. So first of all, let's see what is an array and how can we declare an array. And after that, we'll see different type of array related operations. Okay. So first, what is an array? What is the definition? So array is a collection of elements of same data type. So that's the basic definition. Array is a collection of guys, can you see my screen, everyone? Can you see my screen? Okay, great. So array is a collection of elements in the sense some values, set of values of same data types, and same data type in the sense which is called homogeneous data. So we have two kinds of data, homogeneous and heterogeneous. Homogeneous means all the data belongs to same data type. Heterogeneous means the data belongs to different data types. So array is a variable and which can store multiple values of same data type. Okay. And we can store multiple values into single variable. So when it is required, so when we have to use array concept. One example, let us say in a class, there are 100 students are studying and I want to maintain 100 students of data. Let's say every student is having name, every student is having IDs and so on. Now I want to maintain 100 student IDs. Every student is having unique ID. So I want to store 100 student IDs. And normally how many variables we have to create? 100 variables are required. 100 variables are required to store 100 student IDs. For every student, there is one specific variable is required. So if we create 100 variables, there are two problems. One is we cannot manage those number of variables. It is very difficult to manage, and also it is very difficult to operate. Suppose based on these values, if you want to perform any operations tomorrow, it is very difficult to perform operations on every student ID or every student some value. So this is a main problem if you have more number of variables in your script. So instead of doing that, we can simply create one variable and that can hold 100 values or more than 100, whatever you have. So n number of values we can store in one single variable. So that is called array. Array is a collection of elements or set of values of same data type. Same data type means arrays allows only homogeneous data, right? So how can we declare an array variable? So if it is a normal variable, we can say data type, variable name, and we can directly assign data like this. So int is a data type, a is a variable, 10 is a value which we have assigned to the variable. And suppose if it is an array variable. So array variable means which can store multiple values, right? So how can we define array variable? First data type and then variable name. And one single bracket we have to keep like this, single bracket equal to, we have to use something called new keyword, new. Okay, this particular keyword will allocate memory to this variable, new, and again data type. One more time, int. In the one bracket, here we can specify how many values you want to store in this variable. Let us say I want to store 10 values or 5 values. I can specify that. And this is called as number of values or number of locations, we can simply say. And how many values we want to store in array, that we can specify in the bracket. So this is a syntax, the variable, variable name, single bracket, equal to new enter, again, same data type. In the bracket, we can specify how many number of values we want to store. So as soon as you declare the variable like this, it will allocate 5 locations to this particular variable. Normally, it will allow only one location if it is a normal variable, because it is a array variable, so that it will assign 5 different locations. Okay, 5 different locations. But how we can store the data in this array? So to store the data in array, first it is allocated 5 rows actually. This number is representing number of rows. So I can say this is a 5 rows will be allocated like this: 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So 5 locations are allocated. The variable name is A. Now these are the 5 locations: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it can depends upon the number you specified here. So those many number of locations will be allocated. Now every location is represented by an index number. Every location should need some address, right? If you want to operate this data, if you want to add some data in the location, or if you want to retrieve some data from that particular position, we need some kind of address that is called index. So every location is identified by using index. And here in array, index number will start from 0. So this is a 0 position, first position, second position, third position, and then fourth position. So total number of elements are 5. And what is the maximum index here? 4. That means if maximum number of elements are n, the maximum index should be always n minus 1, because index is always starting from 0. Okay, 0 is also one of the location. So here also we can store the data. So if number of values are 5, then obviously the last index value should be always minus 1, that is 4. Okay, remember this. Now, how can we access? For example, here I want to store some data. Let's say I want to store something called 100. Then how can we store here is simple. A of 0. So 0 is a position or the index of the element is equal to 100. So now this 100 will store into the 0 position. And similarly, suppose in the first position, I want to store some other value. So let's say A of 1 is equal to 200. Like this, we can store values. A of 2 equal to 300. So like this, for in every index number, we can store some value. If you're not storing any value, still that memory is empty. Okay. So later, anytime we can store the value. Until unless you store the value, that space is empty. And the last one, A of 4 equal to 400 is the last position. And if you're trying to add value in the 5th position, it will give you exception, array index out of bound exception, because there is no 5th position here. 4 is the last position. So if you're trying to add some more value in the 5th position, it will give you array index out of bound exception. Okay. So this is how internally the array will be managed. And at the time of retrieving the data also, we want to get the value from first place. So you can say A of 1. You can put this in the print statement. So this will get the value from the particular position. Or if you want to get the value from the 4th position, so A of 4. So that you can put in the println statement. So this will extract the value from this array. So by using index number, we can identify or we can represent each and every value in arrays. And the ultimate goal is here is what? We can store multiple values or group of values into one single variable. Okay. And all those values should be same data type. Homogeneous data means what? Same type of data we have to add. So one is integer, one is float, another one is character, another one is string. This is not possible. Directly, it is not possible, but there is a ways to store multiple data types also. I will tell you at the end of the session. But by default, as per array concept, it is designed only for homogeneous data. Okay, but indirectly, we can also store heterogeneous data by creating object type of array. Okay, that is a different concept we'll discuss later. So this is a basic initial understanding. So how we can create an array, how can we store the values in array, how can we operate by using index. Index will play most important role in arrays concept. Okay. Now, there are two kinds of arrays we have. One is single dimensional and second is two dimensional. single dimensional, and then two dimensional. Single dimensional, two dimensional, which is also called multi-dimensional. So first let us start with the single dimensional. Once you understand, then we go with the two dimensional. Okay. So first let us talk about single dimensional. So what is single dimensional is, just now we have discussed, that is comes under single dimensional, means only we have a rows. In array, we can create only rows, that is single dimensional. And along with the rows, if you create columns also, that is called multi-dimensional or two-dimensional. Rows and columns both will be there. Okay. So first let us start with the single dimensional array. In the single dimensional array, we will do different type of operations. We can do n number of operations. First of all, let's start with the basic types of operations, basic operations. The first thing, how to declare an array and how to add values into array. And suppose if I already added some values into array, so how many values we have added? So that also we can find, that is size of an array we can find. And how to read a specific value. Let's say I have stored 100 values in array, and how can we read a single or specific value from array? And how can we read multiple values from array? So these are the basic operations. Later we will discuss some more operations, but these are the very basic. Until unless you understand this, you cannot do further operations. So declaration, adding values into array, finding size of an array, and then read single value from array, read multiple values from array. Okay. Now, first let us start with declaration and everything. So directly go to Eclipse. And let's go to our project. So this is our project. Earlier we already created. Now let's create a new package for today. New package. This is day 6 today. Click on finish. Okay. Now inside this, I'm creating a new class. So I'll name it as single dimensional array. And here we should take main method also. Click on the finish. All right. So now it is created a new class, and inside this there is a main method. Now inside this main method, we have to write our script. So first, single dimensional array. So what is the first thing? So let me put all these points. Just keeping this comment here. So now we'll see one by one. So first thing, how to declare an array. So to declare an array, there are two different approaches are there. Okay, so the first approach, the declaration part, okay? Declaring arrays. So the first part is, let's say, approach 1. In approach 1, so first we will create an array variable. Let's say int a bracket equal to new int bracket, and here we can specify how many values we want to store in a array. Let's say 5 values I want to store, and then semicolon. This is called declaration. And once you declare an array, then we can store the data into the array. We can add values into array. So to add values into array, we have to represent each and every location. So when I create an array, it will create 5 different rows. Let's say this is my array. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 locations. 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. And all are integers. So currently I'm storing some numbers here like this. I want to store 300, 400, and then 500. Okay. So how to store the data in an array? So to store the data in array, we can simply say this is just a declaration. Once you declare an array, then we can store the data or we can add the data. So how can we do this? By using index. A of 0. In the 0 position, what is the value we want to store? 100. So that you can specify. That's it. Now A of 1 and 200. And A of 3, 300. A of 0, 1, 2. And this is 3, 400. A of 4 is 500. Okay. So like this, we can store values into array. So last index is always 4 here because we are specifying 5 is a number of locations, and maximum index is 4 only. And we can store even strings also. Instead of int, if you create a string array, we can store only strings. And if you create a character array, you can store only characters. And if you create a double type of an array, you can store only double values. Okay. Yes, arrays always start from 0. So index is 0 every time. Remember this point. So 0 is a starting point of index. Index will always start from 0 as per the programming. Not only Java, in almost in every programming, indexes will always count from 0 itself. Okay. So now this is the declaration, and then we have assigned some data into the array. So now this array contains the data. This is one approach. So declaration and then assignment. So declaration means we just declare the variable. Assignment means we have added or we have assigned some data into the variable. This is one approach. And the second approach is also there. And I'll tell you which approach is preferable. First, let us understand what are the approaches. Now the second approach. Approach 2. And we can declare and assign the data in one single line. That is the second approach. Within single line, we can create an array. We can assign directly data into array. For example, here, int variable name bracket, single bracket, equal to curly braces. In the curly braces, we can directly add data like this, 100, 200, 300, 400, like this. You can directly keep adding n number of values. You can also add n number of values like this. So this is another approach. Declaration as well as assignment, both are happening within single line. So this is another approach. This is the first approach and the second approach. So, but which one we have to choose? When we have to go with the first approach, when we have to go with the second approach? If you look at both of the things, second approach seems very simple and very easy, right? And within single line of code, we can do it. But sometimes we have to go with the first approach, sometimes. And most of the times we can also prefer second approach. But there is a criteria. So what is the criteria? Sometimes what happens is, if you already know how many elements you want to store or how much of data you want to store in an array, if you already know that information and you don't want to add more values in future, you don't want to add any more values in future in array, then you can go with the first approach. This is fixed. The size is fixed. When I say 5 here, only 5 elements you can store. You cannot store more than that. So this is fixed. Okay. So if you already know how many values you want to store, and in future, if you don't have any plan to add any more values into array, then you can go with this approach, first approach. Okay. And suppose if you don't know how many values you want to store, maybe in future also, if you want to add more number of values, is there any possibility? Okay, if there is any possibility to add more number of values in future, and you don't know exact number, how many values you want to store, in those cases, approach 2 is preferable. Okay, this is more dynamic because we can add more number of values, and if you don't want values, you can remove the values also. So it is more dynamic in nature. So we can prefer the first approach or we can prefer the second approach. If you already know size of an array, and if you don't want to add more values in future, then go with the first approach. And if you don't know how many values you want to add, maybe in future also you can add number of values, then you can go with the second approach. Okay, these are the two different approaches which we have to declare an array. You can go with this one or you can go with this one. Fine. Now we have seen declaration and also adding values parallelly. So this is called declaration and this is called adding values. In the second example, this is the declaration. And here we don't need a new keyword. Okay, so how many values we have added, accordingly, the locations also will be automatically increased. So if you want to update in future, just add one more value here, 500 or 600. You can just add one more value like this. Okay, and here also index works. Okay, this is a 0 index. This is the first index, second index, third index, fourth index. So the automatically, as soon as you are added more number of values, automatically it will allocate locations. Okay. So this is more dynamic in nature. So you can add more number of values and you can also decrease number of values. Okay. So for example, here, one problem we have with the first approach. Suppose you say 5 locations defined, 5 locations are allocated. But if you added only 3 numbers and rest of them, what happens? Those memory will be wasted still, because we haven't assigned any data into this. Until unless we assign the data, the locations will be wasted over, right? But in the second approach, there is no problem with that, because if you have only 2 numbers, only 2 locations are allocated. If you have added 5 locations, 5 locations are allocated. Even if if you remove 2 values or 3 values, automatically the locations will be removed automatically, right? So this is how this is mostly preferable, because in future you can add more values, or if you don't want, you can remove existing values. Still index is working, you can retrieve the data, you can add more data. So whatever operations we can do in the same thing, we can also do in the second approach. Okay, so these are the 2 different approaches which we have to declare and adding values. Now suppose I have already added some values into array, then I want to find size. How much size, how many values we have added to the array. That is basically called length of an array. Find, instead of size, we can say length. Okay, find length of an array. Length means how many values we have stored in array. So that information we can get. So how to find it? Find length of an array. So the declaration can be anything. You can go with this approach or this approach, no matter. Rest of the things will continue as usual. So find length of an array. So to find the length of an array, first we specify the array variable dot. There is a keyword available here called length. This is a keyword. And this will actually returns the length of a array. Length means how many values we have stored in an array. But we have to print that value. So to print that value, you can keep this inside the printer. System.out.println a dot length. So whenever you want to find length of an array, you can use this command a dot length. A is nothing but a array variable. Dot length is a keyword which will find length of a string. So when I run this, this will give you how many values we have stored. How many values we have stored? 5 values we have stored. So how many values we have stored? Those many number of values will be returned. That's called length of an array. So a dot length. Length is a keyword through which we can find length of an array. So you can also put some description. You can say length of a array. Okay. So you can just a concatenation operator, because we want to join those 2 things. So when you run this, you will get exactly length of an array is 5. Okay, this is one operation. Now, suppose I want to read a specific value from an array. I want to read a value from array, specific value from array. So then how can we read? So the next operation. How to read value or data from array, specific location. Okay, simple. System.out.println. Here specify the location, from which location you want value. So for example, here 4th location, I want this value 500 I want. So I can simply say 4 index number. So here 4 is what? 4 is index number. 4 is index. So if I specify 4 here, a of 4 means 500 should return. So when I execute this, you will get a 500. So if you want to extract a specific data from an array, you can write like this. Okay, for example, I have 100 values in array. I want to retrieve all 100 values. Then how many print statements are required? 100 print statements are required, right? In every print statement, we have to change the index number 0, 1, 2, 3 like this. It is very tedious task, right? If you want to write 100 print statements, it is a very tedious task. So if you want to read all the values, all the data from array, We can read it by using looping statement. Okay, we can read it by using looping statement. Why looping statement is required? So why looping statement is required? A simple example I'll tell you. So how to extract the zero position? A of 0. System.out.println A of 0. Next statement, system.out.println A of 1. Again, system.out.println A of 2. So like this, we have to write n number of statements. We have 100 numbers, 100 statements we have to write. Instead of doing that, we will write only one single statement. And this statement will repeat multiple times. In every iteration, we will just try to increase this index number. Okay, 0, next round 1, next round 2, next round 3. So then what will happen? Every time you will get a new value, A of 0 value in the first iteration, second iteration A of 1, third iteration A of 2. Like this, how many times we have to repeat this? Depends on the number of values. Depends upon the length of an array. Right? So single statement, we will repeat multiple times just by changing the index number, by incrementing the index number. And how many times we have to repeat this? Till we reaches the last element, till we reaches the length of an array. Okay. So now tell me, what is the starting point? Whenever you want to use a looping statement, we have to know three things, right? What is the starting point? Initial value here, index, initial value 0. And how much value you have to increment here? Index every time 1 means plus plus. And where we have to stop? As soon as it is reached the length, right? How many values are there? So there we have to stop, right? So now let us try to understand. If you don't put anything in A of bracket, there are no values. Array still will be created, but there are no values. That is normally called empty array. If there are no values, there is no use, right? So that is called empty array. If you put the values, values will be present. If you're not putting the values, simple just array will be created, which is empty. And then if you find length of an array, it will give 0 itself. If we don't have any values in A dot length will return 0 because there are no values in array. Okay. Now, so let us see how can we read all the data from array. So currently we have these many data. So all the data. So a simple example I'll tell you this. Let me just comment this. If you don't have any values in array, then what will happen? So you can say A of bracket, and here I'm not storing any data. Just you can simply declare like this. It is giving an error. First of all, the local variable A may not have been initialized because it is not enough. We have to initialize an array. Initialize means at least we have to write new into how many values we have. Or we can at least specify like this. No values in array. Okay, there are no values. Now, what could be the length of an array here is? It is giving array index out of one solution because so far we haven't stored any values here. You can see this. Length of an array is what? 0. And here this statement is giving this index out of bound exception actually. Because we haven't stored any value so far. So there is no value in the fourth position. So this statement is giving array index out of bound solution. But if you run as a Java application, now I can say length is 0. Because there are no values in this. Length is 0. Okay. But array is got created, but there are no values. There is no positions. Okay. Now I can say only 10 and 20. Only 2 values I have added. Now if you find the length of an array, it will be 2. So 2 elements are there. Okay. So like this, we can create an array with some variable. And if you create an empty array, there are no values at all, but still array will be present. Okay. Now, so how to read multiple values? Let me enable the statement. So how to read multiple values means all the values from array I want to read by using index. Okay, so now let's see the last. Reading all the values from array. Okay, reading all the values from array. So how to read all the values from array? Here we want to use a looping statement. So instead of writing this statement multiple times, just we will write only one time and we will keep changing the index number. So which loop we will prefer here is most of the times we use for loop only, especially when you're working with arrays, we use for loop. And there is another type of for loop specifically designed for arrays or collections, that is called for each loop. That is another flavor of normal for loop. Okay, so most of the times we use it. I will show you both of the for loops to read the data from arrays. So first we will see normal for loop, which we have already discussed in the previous session. Okay, how to read the data by using normal for loop, just normal or classic for loop. So how to write for loop? Okay, now we need to specify three things: initialization, condition, and then incrementation, right? So what is initialization? Int I equal to, I is representing index number starting from 0. And how many times we have to repeat this? How many times less than or equal to? How many times we have to repeat this? It depends on number of values. It depends on number of values. How many values currently we have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 values currently we have. Can you specify 5 here? Can you specify 5? No, right? Because there is no value in the fifth position. Always index start from 0, right? So if index start from 0, this should be always I less than or equal to 4. This is right condition. Or you can put I less than 5. This is also right condition. Because whenever I value becomes 5, 5 less than 5, condition become false. Then it will automatically exit. Right? Whenever I value become 5, 5 less than 5, condition become false. Then it will exit. This is also right. Or if you want to specify maximum index, you can say I less than or equal to, if you want to specify index, last index number, you have to specify this. Is this clear, everyone? So simply I'm saying, if you say I less than or equal to 0, if you want to use, this should be last index number. That is total length minus 1. Total length minus 1. Okay. And if you are using less than, then it should be total length. Okay. For example, here I'm saying 4 and 5, 4 or 5. Suppose if you don't know length of an array, there may be 50 or there may be 100 or 200. You don't know. You don't know the size. But how can we put this condition? If you don't know the size, how can we put this condition? If you don't know the size, but I want to repeat this loop for all the elements, how much data we have in this array, those many times we have to repeat this for loop. But you don't know how much size it is. If you know the size, you can directly specify here. You can say I less than or equal to 4. Okay, or I less than 5. You can specify. But if you don't know the size, then how can we do this? Yes, you can get the length of an array dynamically. How can we get length? A dot length. Okay, this is how we can put the condition. Then how much value we have to increase by L value? 1. So if you use less than here, directly you can say A dot length. That will return the total number of elements. And if you are using I less than or equal to, then here also you should do minus 1. Okay, A dot length minus 1. So is this clear to everyone? Please confirm in the chat box. The condition is clear, everyone, how to put this condition? Because why all this? Because index will start from 0. Accordingly, we have to arrange the condition. Okay, because index will start from 0. So accordingly, we have to specify the condition. If you are using only less than, then A dot length is enough. Okay, because we are saying less than here. So say I less than or equal to, then A dot length minus 1 also required. Okay, by minus 1 is required. Why it is required? Because A dot length will give total size. 5 it will return. But there is no element in the 5. So minus 1 will give the last index. Okay. So remember this point. Okay, so I say A dot length means you should say only less than, equal to not needed. Right. So here, actually, you can put condition I less than or equal to 4 or I less than 5. Same thing you can write I less than or equal to A dot length minus 1 or I less than a dot length. Okay, I'm writing all combinations. You guys can try this later. So all are correct. All these conditions are correct, right? Fine. So now we put this. Next, now we want to extract the data from the particular location. So we can use one print statement. A of, here we specify the index. Whichever index we pass, that value it will return. And that value will be printed. And here, instead of hard coding that value, like 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, we can simply pass I value. Okay. So then what will happen? First I value 0. Condition is true. Then it will enter into the block. So initially a value of I, A is I. I value is what? 0. A of 0 means what? 100. So first time it will print the first value, 0 value, which is 100. Now second iteration, I value becomes 1. Again, condition is true. Now here A of 1 means 200. Next I value becomes 3. So value will be 300. Next to 400. Next to 500. Then as soon as I value becomes 5 less than or equal to a dot length, condition become false. Then it will exit from the for loop. So this is how we can simply write one for loop, which will read the data from arrays. Now we can see these are the values which we are able to read. Okay, this is by using normal for loop. So instead of writing this statement multiple times, we can write only one single time, and we are just changing the index number. Every iteration, we are incrementing the I value by 1, so that we will able to capture all the values from array. This is a way we can read data from single dimensional array by using normal for loop. Now, let me show you another for loop, which is called enhanced for loop or for each loop. It's more simpler than this one. Okay, very simple. So let me show you. This is called enhanced for loop, also called as for each loop. This is another version of for loop. Mostly we use this with arrays concept and then collections also. Now let me show you same thing. So how to read the data from array by using enhanced for loop. So let's comment this above code. Now it's very simple. First, let me write the syntax and then I'll show you how we can execute this. For same, but here we don't have initialization, we don't have condition, we don't have incrementation. So we don't need to specify them. So that is another beauty of enhanced for loop. So initialization we will specify, but incrementation will automatically happen. Condition is also inclusive inverse. So how we can do it? Just specify some variable name, some x colon array name. That's it. And here just print x value over. Simple. There is no index, there is no incrementation, there is no condition, nothing is there. Simple. These three statements are able to print all the data. It is more simpler than first one. But how it is going to execute? So that we have to understand. Very simple. So A is an array which is having 5 different values, right? So let's say this is my array, which is having 5 values here: 100, 200, 300, 400, and then 500. Here we don't need to bother about indexes. Okay, when I use enhanced for loop, we no need to bother about indexes. So how it is going to execute? In the A is an array. In the A, what is the first value? 100. So the first value from A will be stored in X. That is 100. First value is 100. So X is 100. Then it will come inside. Then it will print 100 here. In the next round, it will get another number. Second number is 200. That will assign to the X. Now it will come inside. Then X value 200 is printed. Third round, it will assign 300. Now X value becomes 300. Now it come inside. 300 is got printed. So like this, every time it will capture the new number from array and store into a variable that we are got printing. But when it will stop, as soon as all elements are got completed or finished, then this will automatically exit. So this is how it will work. Simple. And here we should use something called colon, not equal to. Colon we have to use. as per the syntax. Okay. So in every round of iteration, it will get each value from array and assign into variable. First 100 will assign, next 200 will assign to the X, next to 300, next 400, next 500. There are no more values. Then it will automatically stop. So every time whenever you get a value in text, immediately we are trying to print this value. Okay. So this is how enhanced for loop works. So here we don't need to specify any condition, no initialization, no incrementation. Everything will be taken care of loop itself. But in case of normal for loop, we have to specify index number, condition, all those things. Okay. So when I execute this, observe, it will just print all the values as it is. So which one is easiest one? Guys, which one is easiest one? How you are feeling about normal for loop and enhanced for loop? First one or second? Which one you will prefer? Normal. Yes. Second one is more simpler because we are not going to deal with any indexes things, right? So most of the times we use enhanced for loop or for each loop when you're working with arrays concept. In future, even collections like array list, hash map, set collection. So almost every collection, we try to use this looping statement, enhanced for loop. This is especially designed for collections and arrays concept. Okay. So this is all about single dimensional array. So we are going to discuss so many examples because this is most important topics. And tomorrow also the same topic will be continued. And we will see more examples on this. These are the very basic operations: declaration, adding values, find length of an array, reading single value, multiple values like this. If you know these operations, then we will go to the next level. Like how can we sort array? How can we search an element in array? Okay, how can we add number of elements in array? How can we add total sum? So there are different type of programs we can practice based on the array itself. So these are the basic operations. Okay. So if you want to print a particular value, don't go with the looping statement. Okay. So if you want to print a particular value, we should not use any looping statement. So directly you can print like this. You can just directly use one single statement and specify the index of the number. That's it. We are not going to prefer any loop. Loop is what is the purpose of the looping statement is repetition, right? If there is any something which are repeating multiple times, then we will always prefer the looping statement. So if you want to extract a particular value, single value, then there is no looping statement required. You can directly write a print statement by specifying the index number, and whichever value you want to extract, you can extract just by specifying the index number. But when we have to use looping statement, if you want to read all the data, all the values from arrays, from every index, then we will prefer the looping statement. Okay. Now, this is a single dimensional array. So the tomorrow session, we will see more examples. Now, let us discuss about two-dimensional array. So two-dimensional array, how we can use two-dimensional array. So this is another type of an array. In the two-dimensional array also, we can do the same kind of operations. But first of all, we'll see how to create a two-dimensional array. Two-dimensional array. So two-dimensional array and single-dimensional, what is the major difference? If it is a single-dimensional array, we have only rows like this. 0 row, first row, second row, third row, fourth. This index is basically representing the row number. Okay. This is single dimensional array. And two-dimensional or multi-dimensional means we have a rows along with the columns. Like this. Like this. So these are the rows and these are the columns. Columns and rows. Rows will start from 0. This is 0 row, first row, second row, third row. Similarly, column index also start from 0. This is 0 column, first column, second column, and so on. This is called two-dimensional array. If you simply say it is a tabular format. Rows and as well as columns. Rows index will start from 0. Even column index also start from 0. But how can we operate the data? How can we add the data? How can we retrieve the data? Again, by using index. For example, in this, I want to store 100 in this particular position. So what is the row number of this? 0. What is the row column number of this? 0. So how to represent this location is A of 0 and 0 equal to 100. Now this 100 will be stored in the 0 row. This is row, this is a column. First bracket, we specify the row number. Second bracket, we specify the column number. So this number will go and store in the 0 row and 0 column. So here it will store. Similarly, here I want to store some value. So row number is 3, column number is 2. So A of 3 and 2 like this. So in the third row, second column, the 500 will be added. At the same time, retrieval also. If you print this statement in the println, then this will return the value which is there in the 0, 0 position. Same thing, if you put this in the println, this will return the value which is there in the third row and second column. Okay, so this is called two-dimensional array. So we have multiple rows and also we can have multiple columns also. N number of rows and n number of columns. There is no limit. You can put n number of rows and n number of columns. Okay, this is single and two-dimensional array. The difference between single and two-dimensional. Single dimensional, we have only rows. Whereas in two-dimensional, we have rows as well as columns. Okay, now we'll see how to perform different type of operations in two-dimensional array. So almost the same operations we are going to do. Whatever operations we do in the single dimensional, same type of operations we can also do in two-dimensional array. So now we'll see how to declare, how to add values, how to find size. Here size in the sense, not only rows, column size also we can find. And how to read a specific or single value and how to read all the values from two-dimensional array. Now we'll see one by one. So I'll create another example. New class. This is called two or multi-dimensional array. Two-dimensional array. Taking main method, say finish. Okay. So listen this very carefully. Little bit complicated. Just listen. Very simple. You need to more focus on this. So first thing, how to declare an array. Again, there are two different approaches here. Just like a single dimensional array, we have seen two different approaches, right? What is standard, other one is dynamic. One is fixed array. We can say this is a fixed and this is a dynamic. So fixed means what? First we have to declare an array, then we can assign the data. And here we can declare array, immediately we can assign the data in the curly braces. Same two approaches are applicable for two-dimensional array also. So declaring array. Okay, so approach one. First approach. So first declaration, int a, instead of one bracket, we say two brackets. And equal to new, again data type, and again two brackets. And in the first bracket, we specify number of rows. In the second bracket, we specify number of columns. Okay. So for example, I want to have 3 columns, 3 rows, and then 2 columns. Okay. 3 rows and 2 columns. You can have n number of rows and number of columns. You can have 10 columns, 20 columns also. No problem. So it depends upon the data. We can specify the total number of rows and total number of columns. So this is called declaration. So then what will happen if you create an array like this? It will allocate 3 rows and 2 columns. So the array will be created like this. 3 rows and 2 columns. 0 row, first row, second row, 0 column, first column. Always index start from 0 only. So that we have to always remember. Okay. Now I want to store some data here. Let's say here 100, 200, 300, 4, 5, and then 600. So to store the data, we have to again write multiple statements. So here I can say a of 0, 0. 0, 0 position, we want to say 100. Okay, and then a of same 0 row, and first column, 200. So with this, first row is completed. 0 row is completed. Now the second, A of 1, 0. First column, first row, 0 column. Here, 300. Then A of same row and column number 1. Here, 4. Now the third thing, A of 2. And here, 0. 500. A of 2, same row, 1 equal to 600. So you can have n number of rows and n number of columns. So this is how we can assign the data. So this is approach 1. First declaration, and then you have to specify number of rows and columns. These are fixed, and then we can add some data. So again, when we have to go with this approach, if you already know how much data you want to store, in future, if you don't have any plan to add new data, then you can go with this approach. Okay, this is, we can say, fixed type of an array. This is one approach. Now, in the second approach, how can we add multiple rows and columns? Second approach. Now, approach 2. So it is more simpler again. First, and one more thing is, before doing this, in the declaration, these brackets you can keep in different places also. Same thing, you can write like this. Okay, you can write like this. So you can put these brackets. You can put this bracket, remove from here. You can put this before the variable also. This is also right notation. Okay, in some places you can see this. And by seeing this, you should not be confused. Okay, you can put those brackets before the variable also. And you can put the bracket after the variable also. Or you can put one bracket before the variable, another bracket after the variable. This is also correct. All three notations are correct. And this is also correct. You can put two brackets before the variable is correct. And the next one is what? You can put bracket before and after. You can put this bracket, one bracket before, another bracket after. So this is also correct notation. Okay, so just follow one approach. All three syntaxes are correct. You can put brackets, both the brackets after the variable, or you can put both the brackets before the variable, or you can put bracket before one and after one. Anything is correct. And same thing is applicable for single dimensional also. We go back to the single dimensional. So this is also correct. And you can put like this. Okay, you can put this bracket before the variable also. This is also right notation. And this is not there. So you can put the bracket before and after the variable. So anything is correct. This is another way. I will put like this comment. Okay, both are correct. Right. Now come back to the two-dimensional. So this is the first approach. So we can declare an array and specify total number of rows and columns. And then we have added the data in all the positions. Now, in the second approach, how can we declare and store the data in two-dimensional? So let us comment this. So now second approach. First, declare an array, A, two brackets. This is same. Now curly braces, but here this time, not only rows, we also have columns, right? So how can we store it? We have to follow a different approach. Take one big curly braces. Now, again inside this is the first row, another curly brace. Here you can specify the first row numbers. In the first row, that means 0 row, what are the values we have? 0, 100 and 200. So we can say 100, 200. So this is the first row. That is your 0 element, 0 row element. Comma, open another curly brace. Here 300, 400. This is the second row elements. Comma, another braces. 500, 600. That's it. So this is how we can store. Okay, and if you are having confusion, you can keep this in the next line like this. It will be more clear, right? So first row, second row, and the third. You can also put like this. This is the way we can store data in two-dimensional array. So if we have another column, no problem. You can add another column like this. Here you can add another number. Okay. So like this, we can store data in two-dimensional array directly. So take one big curly braces. Inside this, every row data we specify in the curly braces. So this is the first row. This is the second row, third row, and you can put comma, and then you can add more number of rows because this is the last row. So I'm just removing the comma. So this is how we can store data in two-dimensional array directly. Again, this is more dynamic. In future, if you want to add more rows and columns, you can still add. Okay. And if you want to remove existing, you can directly remove it because it will allocate memory locations dynamically. Depends upon how many rows and how many columns you have added. Accordingly, it will allocate memory. Okay. So this is how we can store data in two-dimensional array. You can go with the first approach or second approach. Now, we'll see the different operations. How to find the size of an array. Size. In the previous example, we have only number of rows. There are no columns. So we have used length. That will return number of rows. So here also, same thing we will use to get the number of rows. So to get the number of rows in array, we can simply say number of, or we can say length of rows. Okay, and here a dot length. So this will always gives the total number of rows, even it is a single dimensional or two-dimensional. A dot length, because in the two-dimensional also we have a number of rows. So when I say a dot length, obviously it will return 3. But how to find a number of columns in a particular row? Where exactly the rows or columns are present? In the particular row. First row is a high priority. In the row contains the columns. So if you want to find out number of columns in a specific row, almost every row is having same equal number of columns. So, but we need to take at least one row to find number of columns. So how can we do this? A dot length. This will give you length, number of rows, but we want columns. So what we can do here, we specify the row number. Suppose when it says 0 here, now this length keyword will find out number of columns in a 0 row. So for example, let's try to print this. Okay, so a of 0 dot length. And here I will write length of columns. And then concatenation. Just observe this. So you can see here, a of 0 dot length. So this will give you number of columns in a particular row. A of 0. So when I run this, this will give you total number of rows are 3, columns are 2. Right? Exactly same thing. So almost every row is having same number of columns. So you don't need to change this value. But if we have a different number of columns in every row, then specifically we have to specify from which row you want to find number of columns. So accordingly, we have to specify the row number. Okay. So if you want to find number of rows in a array, we can directly say a dot length, array name dot length. If you want to find number of columns, first go to a specific row and then find out length. That will give you number of columns in a particular row. Okay. So this is how we can get number of rows and number of columns in particular two-dimensional array. Now, the next operation. How to read single value from an array. How to read a specific value or a single value from an array. Suppose I want to read a value from second row and first column. What is the value which we have here is 600. Second row and first column. So how can we read it? System.out.println a of 2 brackets, second row, first column, like this. Second row and first column. When I run this, you can extract any value just by passing row number and column number. So this will obviously return 600. One specific value we're able to read. and particular row number and particular column. You can just specify like this. Now, if you want to read all the data, I want to read all the data, then how can we do this? So these are the values you have to specify in print statement. 0, 0 means 100 it will print. 0, 1 means 200. 1, 0 means 300. 1, 1 means 400. 2, 0 means again 500. 2, 1 means 600. So multiple println statements we have to write. Okay, multiple println statements we have to write. What is the third row, second column? Which one you're talking about? Here we have to pass index number. Remember. So here 600 means what? Second row, because index will start from 0. Okay, index always starts from 0. That is the reason this is second row, not third row. Similarly, column index also starts from 0. That is how we have a 0 column, first column. There is no second column in this. You got my point? Vijay, I've understood. So index will start from 0. You should not forget that. Okay, there is no third row, second column in this. Okay, so do we have a third row in this array? Third row. There is third, no? No. So this is the index number. When I say 2, 2 is an index number. Second row. When I say 1, 1 is an index number. That is a column. 600. So 2 and 1 means these are the index numbers. Second row and first column. Second index is representing the row. Remember. Second row and first column. Or second index and first index. Okay. Now, so we'll see how to read all the data from two-dimensional array. All the rows and all the columns. Everything we have to read. So then how can we do this? I want to read all the rows and all the columns. Then we have to write a looping statement. So very important. Let's try to understand very clearly. So if you want to read all the rows and columns, earlier we have only rows, right? So just one for loop is enough to read rows. We just incremented index value one by one, and we're able to read the data from single dimensional array. Now this time we also have columns. In every row we have a columns. So now what we have to do is we have to write two different for loops. One for loop can have another for loop, that is nested for loop. We have to write two different for loops. Okay, one is for incrementing the rows for one for loop. For every row we have to increment the columns. For that we have to write another for loop. So one for loop should have another for loop. For each row we have to do multiple iterations. Row also we have to iterate parallelly. For every row, columns also iterate. Once we read all the columns from the first row, then we will go to next row. Again, once we read all the columns, then we go to next row. Again, read all the columns, then we go to next row. So that's how we have to create two looping statements. Two loops are required. Okay. Now, let's see the classic for loop first. Or normal for loop. By using index, we can do it. Now, so there are two for loops are required. So I understood, right? Why two for loops are required? Because this time we have to increment the number of rows. At the same time, we have to increment columns also. That's the reason two for loops are required. So first one for loop. Let's say this is responsible for rows incrementation. So where is the row number starts? Int I equal to 0. And what is the condition? How many rows we have? How many rows we have? So we can say I less than or equal to 0, 1, 2. We can put 2 here. I less than or equal to 2. Or if you want to put number of rows, you can say I less than or less than 3. This is also right. So for now, I say I less than or equal to 2. Then what is the condition? Every time I'll increment row number by 1. So now just observe. Here, this I is representing what? I is representing what? Row number. So instead of I, let me take another variable so that you can remember R. Okay, R I'm taking. R is representing row number, row index. Simply you can say row index. So start from 0, r less than or equal to 2. Every time I'll increment r value by 1. So now once you enter into this block, so current value of r is what? 0. Now in the 0 row, we have to read all the columns data. So to read all the columns data, again, we have to write one more for loop inside this for loop. One more for loop. And here this inner for loop is responsible for what? Incrementing the columns. So here r value 0. Currently we are in the 0 row. In the 0 row, we entered inside this block, and this inner for loop should read the data from all the columns from 0 row. So now where we have to start column number here? Column index start from what? Int c equal to 0. Column index also start from 0. And how many times we have to repeat this? C less than or equal to. How many times we have to repeat the columns? 0 and 1. Only 2 columns. So you can say 1. 2 times we have to repeat. And C value also incremented by 1. Every time we have to increment by 1. This is inner for loop. Now come inside this. Observe here row number is what? 0. Initially row number is what? 0. Condition is 2. Now it will come inside. Here initially C number is what? 0. C number is also what? 0. So 0 row and here 0 column. Okay. Now come inside this. Now when you print this value, A of R and here C, we are passing row number, we are passing column number. So R value 0 that we are passing here, and here C value 0 that also we are passing. So what is the value we will get in the first iteration? First iteration 0 0 means what? 100. Okay, now it is got printed. Now after printing the statement, C value will be incremented by 1. Now what is the C value becomes now? 1. So condition is true or false? 1 less than or equal to 1. Condition is again true. Now again come inside. Now what is the current value of R? Still it is 0 only. And what is the current value of C? 1. It becomes 1. So 0 and 1. 0 and 1 means what? 200 is got printed. Okay. Now C value will be incremented. Now it becomes 2. C value becomes 2. Now condition 2 less than or equal to 1. True or false? False. So as soon as this condition is false, then inner for loop will exit. And again it will go to outer for loop. And here R value will be incremented by 1. So it becomes 1 here. You got my point? So once the inner for loop is got completed and executed, finally it will come back to the outer for loop and then incremented R value by 1. Now R value 1. So it is focusing on first row. Again come to inner for loop. Again it will restart from 0. So C value is what? 0. And 1 and 0. 1 and 0 means what here? 1 and 0. 300. So 300 is got printed. Now C value will become 1. So 1 less than 1. Again condition is true. Now R value 1. C value is also 1. 1 and 1. Which is 400 is got printed. Now C value becomes 2. Then the condition becomes false. So once soon as this condition becomes false, then it will go to outer for loop again. Here R value will be incremented by 1. Again it becomes 2 now. So again 2 less than or equal to 2. True or false? True. So again it will come inside. Again it is restarting for loop. So again initial value 0. It will start from 0. CV0. Now it will come here. So current value of R is what? 2. Current value of C is what? 0. 2 and 0. 2 and 0 means what? 500 is got printed. Now C value becomes 1. 1 less than or equal to 1. True. So again come here. Current value of R is what? 2. Current value of C is what? 1. 2 and 1. 2 and 1 means what? 600 is got printed. Now C value becomes 2. Then condition becomes false. Then it will go to outer for loop. And now R value becomes 3. As soon as R value becomes 3, 3 less than or equal to 2, condition false, then even outer for loop also will be exited. Okay. So once the outer for loop is got also exited, then we will get all the values from array. So this is how we have to write two different for loops. This is called outer for loop. This is called inner for loop. Once inner for loop is repetitions are completed, then again it will go to outer for loop. Value will be incremented. Then again come inside this for loop and again we'll repeat. That means for every row, we are repeating the number of columns. Suppose for loop is executed once and inner for loop will execute 2 times. Again, go to outer for loop executed once. Again, inner for loop will execute it twice because for every row, there are 2 columns. Okay. So guys, I understood how it is going to work. So when you run this, you will get all the values from array like this. All the values, 100, 200, 3, 4, 5, 6, everything we will get. All the rows as well as all the columns. Okay. Again, if you just want to print in the tabular format, suppose I want to print 100 2 line, 200 in one single line, 3 and 4 and another line, 5 and 6 and another line, you can just format the output. So just we need to change some pattern. So instead of println, you can simply say only print. Okay, and so that these columns are there, right? 1, 2. This will print in one single row. After completion of the first row, here you need to jump to the next line. So just to put only println, no value. It is just for jumping into the next line, because once you printed 100 and 200 in single line, then it will go to the next line. Then 300, 400 will be printed. And again go to the next line, then 6 and 5 and 600 will be printed. It is just like a alignment. See how? Now you can see 100, 200, 3 and 400, 5 and 600 like this printed. But again, I want to give some space between these. Numbers are combined, right? So to give one space, what you can do is here, you can choose some concatenate with some space. No value here, just a space. Concatenate with some space. After printing this value, concatenate with some space. Now, when I run this, exactly you will get in the tabular format. Okay. So this is how we can work with two-dimensional array. So can we use length property for rows and columns? Yes. So here I have hard-coded the number of rows and columns. So instead of that, if you want to specify length, if you don't know number of rows, if you don't know number of columns, and dynamically you want to get the data, you can do it. So I can say a dot length, a dot length. Because we say less than or equal to, we should say -1 also. Okay, because we say less than or equal to means, sorry, less than or equal to means a dot length -1. Similarly here, less than or equal to we are using, so obviously it is, observe this, very simple. Now tell me this one, this is something new. Here it is fine, a dot length will give you length of a number of rows and say -1. But here we want to get number of columns in this particular row. So here we want to get number of columns in this particular row, right? How to get it? A of R dot length -1. Okay, you understood the statement? Second for loop. Why I have created? Because if you want to find the number of columns, in which row you want to find, that you have to specify. So A of R means what? Array R is representing row number R. So in this particular 0 row, it will find number of columns in the first round. In the second iteration of for loop, second iteration of inner for loop, R value becomes 1. So in the first row, it will find total number of columns. Initially, in the 0 row, it will find number of columns. In the second round of iteration, in the first row, it will find number of columns. So dynamically, you can put like this. So this will also gives the same thing. Why -1 here? Can anyone tell? In the previous example, I already told you why -1 is required. Why -1 is required? Okay, let's go to previous example one more time. I think you guys are not listening properly, some of you. Otherwise, you won't get these questions. Maybe you joined late. I don't know exactly. See, if I look at here, when we have to use less than or equal to, or -1 and not -1. Simply can say, when I say a dot length, okay, a dot length, that will return total number of values, 5. 5 values are there. Totally 5 values are there. But index will start from 0. So guys, I am again repeating, listen this carefully, at least this time. This is an array. Okay. Why we have to put -1? I'm telling you. 0, 1, 2, 3. So 4. Okay. 0 index, first index, second, third, and 4. Okay. Now you tell me how many number of values are there in this array? Let's say 100, 200, 3, 4, and 5. Values I'm asking. How many values we have? Values. 5 values. Great. How many indexes we have? So index start from 0. So starting index 0. What is the last index? 4. 4 means what? 5 minus 1, right? 4 means 1. 5 minus 1. So index starting is 0. The last one is 4. So if the number of values are 5, the last index should be what? 5 minus 1. That is 4. So if the number of values are n, the last index value should be n minus 1. Is this clear, first of all? So number of values are n. The last index value always should be n minus 1. Okay. Now, based on this, we have to put the condition. Now come back to the condition. In the for loop, when I say I value starting from 0, index is starting from 0. When I say I less than, when I say less than, what is the last index we have to specify? 4 is the last index, right? So how to get this last index? We will get number of values. Length keyword will just return number of values. It will not return indexes. Okay. So when I say a dot length, observe this. When I say a dot length, is it correct or not? A dot length will return what? Number of values. 5 it will return. What I am saying here, I less than 5. I less than 5. Will it get all the values? Initially 0, 1, 2 also matching, 3 also matching, 4 is also matching. But as soon as I value become 5, then what happens? Condition false. So then it will exit. So when I say less than, a dot length is okay. When I use less than here, a dot length is okay. But when I say a less than or equal to, a less than or equal to, a dot length is okay or not? Because a dot length is 5. I less than or equal to 5. When you put I less than or equal to 5, there should be fifth location also, right? But there is no fifth location here. Whenever I value becomes 4, 4 less than or equal to 5, still condition is true. But as soon as I value becomes 5, then what happens? 5 less than or equal to 5, condition is again true. But here there is no fifth position, right? So that is the reason we say -1. Then it will become 4, right? So when I use less than, you have to just say a dot length. When I use less than equal to, if you want to use less than or equal to, then you can say a dot length -1 you have to use, because last index you will get. So total number of values -1 is equal to last index. So we have to repeat the loop till the last index number. We should not go beyond that. Okay. That is the reason. So because of that, the same thing is applicable for two-dimensional array also. The two-dimensional array also, here because we are using less than or equal to, so that we say -1 here also. Okay, this is thumb rule. Less than or equal to means you have to use -1. If you want to use only less than means, just say only a dot length. Okay, so this is how we can read data from two-dimensional array. Okay, so in the nested for loop is also same process. Every time here, R value will be incremented by 1. And again, C value also will be incremented by 1. So once it comes here it will substitute R and C values. R value 0, C value 0, 0, 0. Then you will get the first number. The second of iteration, inner for loop will repeat. Okay, so how it is going to work? Just listen this. This is outer for loop. This is inner for loop. Inner for loop repeated 2 times. For one iteration of outer for loop, inner for loop repeat 2 times. After completion of inner for loop, then it will go to outer for loop and incremented. Again, it will come inside. Again, inner for loop will repeat 2 times. Then again, it will go to, it becomes 3. So because in every row, we have multiple columns also. So we have to increment rows by using outer for loop. Parallelly, for every row, we have to increment the columns also. So once for first row, we have incremented columns. Again, second row, incremented columns. Third row, we incremented columns. Like this, it will work. If you listen carefully, there is no confusion actually. So this is for outer for loop. This is for inner for loop. Simple. In outer for loop, representing the number of rows in array. Inner for loop is representing number of columns in array. This is how the 2-dimensional array will store the data. Okay, 0, 1, 2, 0, 1, 2. 0 row, first row, second row, 0 column, first column, second column. First, we will focus on the first 0 row, then we will read all the columns. So R value 0 initially, then this inner for loop will read all the columns. First 0, second 1, third 2, 0, 1, 2 like this. Once it is completed, so first row is done. Now it will go to outer for loop, means second row. That means first row here. And R value becomes 1. So again, it will come inside and again this inner for loop will repeat 2 times or 3 times. It depends upon the size. And once it is completed, then again it will go to outer for loop, next row. And again come inside this for loop. And this will repeat again multiple times. And inner for loop is exited. Again go to outer for loop. Then there are no more rows here. Then automatically it is exit. So this is how nested for loop works. So guys, everyone is clear. Please confirm in the chat window how exactly the nested for loop works. Now, it will be more simpler if I use enhanced for loop. Okay, let us try to use enhanced for it. It's more simpler than this one because we are not going to write any indexes, nothing. It's very, very simple when I use for each loop or enhanced for loop. Just observe this. Okay, so just first of all, I'm going to write this and then I'll explain how it exactly is going to work. Very simple. Again, here we need 2 for loops. Okay, because whenever you are dealing with a 2-dimensional array, definitely we need 2 for loops. One for loop internally is having another for loop. Okay, so the outer for loop is representing the number of rows, inner for loop is representing columns again. So here, because it is enhanced for loop, the A is array name, colon, int something, let us say some ARR, some array name. And here, ARR, I'll tell you what exactly it is, some X, int X. Now, here we just print X value. That's it. No initialization. This is simple. This much of code is required. So when I execute this, you will get all the values from array. So you get all the values. So now let me show you how exactly it is going to work. It is more easier than first one. Just observe this. This is my 2-dimensional array, which contains currently we have 3 rows and 2 columns. And we don't need to deal with any index. Again, index will start from 0, 1, 2, 0, 1. No problem. So 200, 300, 400, 500, and then 600. Okay, this is my 2-dimensional array. Now, how it is going to read the data from array? So this time, A is representing the entire array. Okay. So from A, again, we have a multiple rows, 0, 1, 2. So in the first round of iteration, what will happen is, from A, it will capture the entire row, the first row. How many values we have in the first row? 2 values. Okay, 2 values we have. So in the first round of iteration, from A, 100 and 200 will be captured. And that I'm going to store in a variable. And if you want to store multiple values into single variable, what type of variable it should be? It should be single dimensional array, right? So if you want to hold multiple values into single variable, what type of variable it should be? It should be single dimensional type of an array, right? So from A, first it will capture 100 and 200, first row data that we are going to store in single dimensional array. ARR is a single dimensional array. Now, how many values it contains? ARR contains how many values? What are they? 2 values, 100 and 200. Okay. Remember, 100 and 200. Now come inside. And here ARR is what? Array, which contains 100 and 200. Now, in this, again, first 100 will store into X. And here 100 will print. Second round, 200 will assign into X. Now here 200 is printed. After that, there are no more values in ARR. Then it will go to again outer for loop. Now, second row, 300 and 400 will be stored into ARR. Next round, 300 and 400. Now, what are the current values of ARR? 400, 300 and 400. Now come inside. So ARR contains a 300 and 400. Now, first 300 will assign to the X. And here X is printed as 300. Next round, 400 is assigned to the X. Then 400 is got printed. Next round, there are no more values in ARR. Then it will go to again outer for. Now in outer for loop, next time it will read another row. 500 and 600 will assign to the ARR. 500 and 600 will assign to the ARR. Now come inside. What is the first value in ARR? 500. 500 will assign to the X. Then here 500 will printed. Next 600 will assign to the X. 600 is got printed. Next, no more values. Then it will go to outer for loop. In outer for loop, here doesn't have any more rows. All are completed. So it will automatically exit. So this is how enhanced for loop works. So now, do you guys understood why we have taken single dimensional array variable in outer for loop? Why you have taken like this? Can we take a normal variable, right? We can take normal variable, but why you have taken array variable? What is the reason behind that? Because A is a 2-dimensional array. In the 2-dimensional array, we have a rows and columns. The 2-dimensional array, we have a rows and columns. So first row, second row, third row. Again, every row contains multiple values. So when I read a particular row, we will get multiple values. So to store these multiple values, we need a single dimensional array. Normal variable is not enough to store those values. Similarly, next row, again, we will get multiple values. Again, same dimension. Third row, we will get again same. As soon as we get the values here, we will again read individual values and we are printing. And again, get another row, next row, next row. Okay. So this is how enhanced for loop works. So when I execute it, this will print all the values 100 to 600. Again, if you want to print in the tabular format, simply you can do only print. Print means it will print output only in single line. And after completion of inner for loop, just write one empty println statement so that that will jump to the next line. So when you run this, this will print values like this in the tabular format. Again, if you want to give some space in X, you can just put some space. X is just a variable which will hold some data, normal variable. Yeah, now we get the tabular format. So this is more simpler than the first approach. So this is called enhanced for loop. Okay, so is this clear, everyone? Yeah, so you can enable the debug point and you can check how we can exactly the statements are executing. Okay, so let me just put some debug point here. So line number 59, I'm just keeping toggle breakpoint. Okay, now let us try to execute this code in the debug mode so that we can see each and every line how it is going to execute. So we have to choose debug as Java application. So wherever you put the debug point, there it is stopped. Okay, now just observe. What is A contains? See, these are the values A contains. 100 and 200 is the first row, 400 is the second row, 5 and 600 is the next row. Okay. Now I'm just crossing the step. To go to the next step, what is the key we have to use? F6. Okay, now I go to next step. Just observe. ARR contains again, see, 100 and 200. What does that mean? We got a first row data. You got my point? So in A, we have these many values, 3 rows. Now the first row is what? 100 and 200. Once this step is crossed, in the second step, in ARR, we got only first row, 100 and 200. Now when you cross this, just observe. X contains what? 100, first value. Now in the second iteration, 200. It is over. Now it will go to outer for loop again. See this. Now A contains what? All the values. But when you cross the step, just observe. This time we got a second row. Previously 100 and 200 ARR value. Now it is 300 and 400. Now I'm crossing this step. First 300 is got printed. Next round, 400 is got printed. Over. Then it will go to again outer for loop. Okay, same. All the values are there. Now the last row, 500 and 600 we should get. Cross the step. Now we can see 500 and 600. So first 500 will be stored in X. 500. Next 600 will be stored in X. Done. Now it will again go to outer for loop. So all the values are there, but all rows are completed, right? So it will automatically exit. So this is how we can debug the code. Step by step, we can execute and see how the values are changing. Okay. So just you practice this, it will slowly, you can be familiar with this and you can understand. It's very, very helpful to understand the flow of execution. Okay, sometimes you may not have understood if you execute the program directly and by seeing the output, but internally how it is executing the flow. If you want to check, you can run the code in the debug mode. Just put one toggle breakpoint, debug as Java application, and then shortcut is F6. When you press F6 function key, it will execute step by step. Okay, so this is all about two-dimensional array. Now quickly I show you object type of an array. It is more simpler. So far, we understood one definition about Java. What is the definition? Java is array. Array is a collection of elements or collection of values of same data type. That is official definition. That means homogeneous data only we can store in array. Only homogeneous data we can store. Means same data type values. If you create an integer array, you have to store only integer. If you create a double array, you can store only double. If you create an array as a string, you can store only strings. But if you want to store heterogeneous data, that means if you want to store different type of data in array, then how it is possible? So that is also possible, but that is not recommended actually. But if you have a different type of data with different data types of data you have available, then you can directly go with the array list. Array list is one of the collection type. So that is preferred most of the times. Okay. But we can also use array to store different type of data. But this is unofficial. Not normally we don't use this. But if in interview, if anybody asks you, can we store heterogeneous data in array? Yes, you can say yes. By using object array, we can do that. So let me show you a quick example. How can we store different type of data in arrays? It can be single or two-dimensional. Anything is fine. The concept is how we can store different type of data in arrays. Different data types, how can we store? Okay, which is normally called as object type of an array. Object array. Fine. So let me just create one array int a. See, in the first, I'm storing integer. Second, I'm storing decimal. Next, I'm storing one character. Next, I'm storing one string. Next, I'm storing some Boolean value. See this? This is called heterogeneous data. Heterogeneous data. So if you want to store heterogeneous data in array, it should not be specific data type. If it is an integer, it is not allowed. So if you want to store heterogeneous data in an array variable, that variable should be object type of variable. Actually, what is an object? This object is a predefined class in Java, just like a string. In string, S is a capital letter, right? So just like a string, object is also one of the type or one of the class in Java. It is a root class actually. All other classes are derived from the same root object class. In the coming sessions, we will try to understand what exactly it is. So this is a super class or is a root class of all predefined classes in Java. For now, just understand only this much. In the coming sessions, I will try to elaborate in the object-oriented programming concepts. Okay. So if you want to store heterogeneous data, the array type should be object. So let me give you some example. If you create int variable, suppose int a, I can store only number. If you create a double or float, you create a double variable or float, you can store only decimal number. If you create a char variable, you can store only character like this. If you create a string variable, you can store only string. If you create a Boolean variable, you can store only true or false. But if you create object type of variable, okay, object type of variable, this can hold any type of data. Okay, remember this. You can store integer, you can store double, you can store character, you can store string, you can store Boolean. All kinds of data is allowed in object type of variable. Okay, allowed all kinds of data. X is allowed all kinds of data. Just remember this point. Same thing for arrays also. If we create an array as an integer, I can store only integer values here. If I create an array as a double, I can store only decimal numbers in array. If you create a string array, I can store only strings. But if you create an array with object type, I can store different type of data. Okay. Now the next thing, how to read this data. Let's write one enhanced for loop. Simple, right? A. From this A, we want to read individual values into variable. Now, what is the type of the variable should be created here? So every time in every iteration, first time 100 you will get into the variable. Suppose here I'm creating one variable called X. So first time 100 will store in X. Second time 10.5. Third time A. Next time welcome. Next time true. So different values are coming into X in every iteration, right? So X should be able to hold all kinds of data. Right. So in that case, what is the type of X? What type we have to specify for X? Obviously, this is also object. Right? Because in every iteration, we are getting different type of data we are getting. That's the reason X is an object. So obviously, you can just print X value. Okay. So this is how we can just read the data from single dimensional object type of an array. Right? If you want to use normal for loop by using index, you can still do that. Suppose if you want to use normal for loop, for index will start from what? 0. Index I equal to 0. How many times we have to repeat? How many times we have to repeat? I less than a dot length minus 1. How many times we have to increase I plus plus? I representing the index. Okay, I representing the index. So here we can just print a of I. That's it. So this is a normal for loop. Using normal for loop also, we will able to read the data. Okay. Clear, everyone? This object type comes under non-primitive. Yes. That is also part of non-primitive because which is able to store all kinds of data. Okay. So guys, understood how we can work with the single dimensional arrays and the two dimensional arrays. This concept is not still completed actually. I should give some more examples. In the tomorrow session, we will see some more examples. Also, we will discuss about string concept, which is most important. And once the strings concept is done, we will also discuss some more examples from arrays. Because this is a most important topic. Even in interviews also, they will give you so many problem statements related to arrays concept, especially. There are so many things we can practice from arrays. A lot of things, sorting, searching, okay, and printing the numbers in the reverse order, ascending order, descending order, sum of elements in array, finding even numbers in array, finding odd numbers in array. You can do a lot of things. The next two sessions, 1 or 2 sessions, we will spend time on this particular concept. Okay. For today, this is enough. You guys can practice these topics for now. And I will give you 2 assignments based upon these topics, first 2 topics, whatever we discussed. Then you guys can try those assignments. So these are the assignment. First assignment, find the sum of elements in array. You guys can try this. I will also provide the video. And if not understood, in the tomorrow session, we will discuss. And tomorrow session, we have something else to discuss, but you guys can try this. It's very simple. First, we need to read each individual value one by one, and then we need to do sum of each and every number. Let's say 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5 equal to 50. So when you pass some data in array, we will get the total sum of all the elements. So this, we have to use looping statement for reading each and every value. As soon as you capture the value, we have to add that value to the sum and take the sum value 0 initially. So I have created some video on this. You can just go to the reference video. You will be able to understand. Very simple, very easy. Just reading the data from array. Now, second, print even and odd numbers from array. So this is also totally depends on the first one. First, we have to read this number and check it is an even or odd number. Print it. And then go to the next number and check even or odd. Again, go to the next number, check even or odd. So for every digit or every value in the array, you have to find even or odd number. And you have to tell how many even numbers are there, how many odd numbers are there in this particular array. Okay. So try these 2 assignments. Both are related to single dimensional array. You guys can try this. And in the last class, somebody asked about prime number, how to find a prime number. So for that, I have given one solution here. You guys can try this simple video I have created. So what is a prime number and how to find the prime number through programmatically. So what is the condition behind that? So in this link, you can just go through, and in this video, you'll be able to understand what is just using by for loop. You can simply do this actually. So prime number, to find the prime number, you can just go to the video link and you can understand. Okay. Fine. So this is all about assignment. So tomorrow we'll still continue the topic strings along with arrays, and we'll see some more examples and some more assignments also I will give you tomorrow session. And meanwhile, you guys practice these assignments. And if you're stuck somewhere, watch that video. And I have clearly explained most of the assignments. I will provide the video links. Okay. Most of the assignments and very small assignments, very easiest one. You guys can try your own if video is not available. Other than that, most of them I provide the video links. Okay. I already told you how to upload all your assignments. You guys can try that. Fine. So I'll stop here for today's session, and tomorrow's session we will continue.